Hey everybody, this is Gerald with Earth and Time, and today I'm going to take you around some of my favorite, unique, unusual, historic sites that maybe people don't know about here in the greater Houston area where I live. Here, most people know places like NASA or know about going to visit where the Rockets play or the Astros or where the Texans play. However, I'm going to take you to some more unique, off the beaten path and maybe more locals only knowledge places, including this one right behind me, the old 1940s Art Deco airport. So with that being said, let's get to it. And to kick off, this airplane's actually a great way to start this video because a lot of the places I'm going to take you all to are going to be a combination of historic places like the old airport here and a lot of places that are really what you consider folk art, things like parks that are mosaics or giant waterfall features in the middle of a park. So I want to take you to some of these unique places, and this airplane's a nice representation of that. Both there's a history piece here as well as an art piece, and we're going to see that over and over again as I take you all around Houston today. So my first stop we can see behind me already is where we had this intro at, and that is a building that was designed by a gentleman named Joseph Finger. And Joseph Finger was a very well-known art deco designer back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and he designed this terminal behind us, and this terminal was in service from 1940 to about 1955. Some people call that the golden age of really public flight transportation, so leading up to World War II and then immediately post World War II. And this museum is pretty fantastic. Now, I've done another episode on this museum, and I'll go ahead and link it up here where you can get a lot more detail about the design of this, and we can actually walk into some old airplanes. But I'm going to go inside and show you a couple highlights today. However, I do recommend that you check out that other video so you can see a little bit more about the exhibits they have here and a little bit more about flight history, both here at Houston as well as across the United States. So let's go take a look. So why the interest in kind of the Art Deco style? I think I've always been fascinated by what was going on in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s here in the United States. And maybe it's just from spending a lot of time with my grandparents that grew up during that time, or maybe it's seeing the first Ghostbusters movie where they're on top of that building fighting the final boss there, Gozer, which is a very classic Art Deco looking building. Whatever it is, I've always been fascinated by this design. So you'll probably see a lot more episodes from me about the history behind these things. And specifically, I would like to go track down some of Joseph Finger's other buildings here in the greater Houston area. All right, let's go inside. So this is the inside of the 1940s terminal. And you can imagine people lined up here getting ready to go on their flights. They'd walk through those doors to the airplane. They'd come over here and check their luggage. And they would sit here and wait until their airplanes would be in. One thing you can do here is you can come out and tour this airplane. You're just on the periphery of the active runway for Houston Hobby over here, so you can actually see the planes out in the distance. So this is a neat place to come, especially with kids and families, and actually watch some airplanes land coming in here and potentially even take off. So it's a pretty unique place from that point of view as well, not just the history, but the fact that you can see from a distance a working airport and watch these planes come in and out. One of the great things you can see in the museum is you can see how people traveled back in the 1940s, really the late 1940s and 1950s, and you can get an idea of what an old military converted plane would have looked like as public transportation. So this plane actually was a military vehicle for training during World War II, and they converted it into a passenger airplane and eventually I think into a private plane as well. But this gives you an idea where you'd have 2, 4, 6, 8 individuals on one of these planes leaving from this terminal. And what's neat is they'll actually let you come in here, as I am now, and walk through the plane. And you can come up here to where today the stewardess would be at, but I think historically this would have been the navigator during World War II for this plane. And then you can actually see where the pilots would sit up there. You can see me in here. In fact, let me go ahead and sit down on one of these chairs. And you can get an idea of the size of one of these planes and being able to look out the window here as well. Pretty cramped quarters, and one thing that surprises me still is they actually have ashtrays. I wonder when the last time they allowed people to smoke on an airplane was. Definitely a unique spot to learn about history, both from aviation to Houston to something unique to do with the family and help them learn about history as well. One of the most fun displays here, with all the displays they have, is looking at how fashion changed for the flight attendants and how things like, you'll see they have this new age or crazy ball on the lady's head, and this was to try to help protect her hair from the propellers before she got on the airplane. So all kinds of crazy inventions and really neat fashion to see here as well, including these trans-Texan flight attendant outfits. And trans-Texan flight or airways actually started here in Houston, and this was their home base, but you can see the types of outfits they'd wear back in the 1950s. And they used what was called a DC-3 plane, so not too dissimilar from the plane that we got to go take a look in just a minute ago. And they have a wing where they talk about the history of flight, which you can see a lot more in my other video. So that way we can move on to some of the other exciting stops here in the greater Houston area. Some of the unique fashions that a flight attendant would wear. And they talk about the role the airport took during World War II. And you can see the Army Air Force planes in front of this Art Deco building right there. This location was also one of the places where the Women's Air Force service pilots were trained during World War II. And check out this pin over here. This pin has some pretty unique history. This pin became the mascot for the Women's Air Force service pilots, or the WASPs, and was actually designed by Walt Disney. The image was first created as part of a cartoon he was considering doing named Fifinella, and it was based on a Roald Dahl book called The Gremlins, and he was considering making this cartoon, and the Wasps asked if they could use its image for their mascot, and Walt Disney said yes. Really neat piece of history that I knew nothing about, and two of my favorite things, World War II and learning about Walt Disney. There's still a lot for us to go see today, but I wanted to point out this historic marker behind me that just talks about Joseph Finger, and that this has been put on the historic places based on the fact that this was his architectural work, as well as it was an old working airport that carried a lot of history with it, as well as we just saw with some of the World War II history that we just learned about. Alright, so let's go ahead and head to our next stop. We're going to go from here, and we're going to go ahead and check out some other folk art areas just north of this area, a place called Smither Park and the Orange Show. Well folks, welcome to Smither Park, one of the most unique parks I've ever been to in the entire United States, and it sits here just south of downtown Houston. And what it is an art mosaic park. So let's go explore this amazing park and one of my favorite unique places to visit here in Houston, Texas. Every single section of this park is covered in mosaics, and that doesn't matter if it's the sidewalk, it's the light pole, the amphitheater, which on certain Sundays of the year they hold musical performances, and I believe they are for free, so you can look that up. The wall separating the park from the rest of the neighborhood. A random chair where you can sit in and be king or queen. You decree this is one of my favorite parks, and it just rained and my butt just got wet. Two playing checkers with these folks. And this may be by far one of my favorite sculptures or art exhibits anywhere, are these two skeletons playing checkers on this table, to this amazing gazebo, which is covered in all kinds of unique items, and we'll explore that in just a minute, to the swing sets, which you can sit here and just enjoy swinging back and forth. And since I already sat down on that wet chair, I might as well sit down on this one too and enjoy a swing. Smither Park is a free park to come enjoy, and it's open from sun up to sundown every day. And as I mentioned before, on Sundays they have special either art exhibits or vendors, or they'll have concerts on certain Sundays of the year. So it's worth checking out the Orange Show website and learning a little bit more about what's happening here. As I stand here and twirl around, you'll see some of these amazing mosaics that are set up here. And so this was really the brainchild of a couple artists from the greater Houston area. And those artists are Dan Phillips and Stephanie Smither. And really this was a dedication to Stephanie's husband, John Smither, who is an artist in the area as well. So you can look up more information on the Orange Show website, which I'll link down below. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the amazing mosaics around this park. This is about the only way a snowman would survive in Houston, is as a mosaic. The detail on each piece that was created in this park is pretty amazing, and I didn't see how much time it took. However, I think they're still adding to it. So it looks like there's a wall down that direction that we can go take a look at, that they're still adding mosaics to. What is that? It's like the creature from the Black Lagoon's mother? Sister? Daughter? One of the neatest parts to explore here is really around the greater pavilion. If I pan down and over, and that is because there's so many little details, and I don't know if this is a bunch of recycled material. You see these old lamps here. See, there's birds flying over me. These old light fixtures. There's a bunch of old plates on this side. And I'm in Texas, so of course you have to have an armadillo with a Stevie Ray Vaughan hat playing guitar, and a raccoon playing banjo. My favorite instrument, and the instrument actually I play just a little bit. And one of my favorites is actually, this is an anglerfish. The little disco ball up there would be like its little angler hanging down, and these are all teeth, and this is the amphitheater. Let's walk around this and see the other side of this anglerfish. And here we wrap around to the amphitheater in this area. We can actually see the teeth and the line that ends up being the central part of the amphitheater. It would be really cool to actually check out a show here. And actually, I think I'm here on a Sunday, and I believe they may even have something going on later on this evening. Unfortunately, I have other plans. I'm not going to be able to stay here and see the performance that may be here tonight. However, this will definitely be on my bucket list for something to bring the family to and something fun to come do going into the future. So from Smither Park, just down the road is another very unique folk art and historic place, and it's known as the Orange Show. Let's go take a look at that and talk a little bit about that unique house and the story of the Orange Show. Welcome to a very unique place here in the Houston area, and that is the Orange Show, which something named the Orange Show I think of would be in Southern California or Florida. However, here in Houston, a gentleman named Jeff McKissick decided to start building a monument to his favorite fruit, the orange, and he started that work in 1956, and it continued until his death in 1980, at which time art patrons in the area pulled together and were able to save this, and you can now do tours through the Orange Show. Pretty unique and fantastic place. Again, another spot that I think is so unique for Houston, but it's based around the folk art history of the city. Now Smither Park, where I just was, is right down in there, and so it's a less than a 2-minute walk down here to check out the Orange Show. And you'll see that this has actually been put on as listed as a National Register of Historic Places now because of how unique it is. And here's that information. The Orange Show, created by Jeff McKissick from 1956 to 1979. And here's a little bit about it. It's open Saturdays and Sundays, and admission's $5. And you can look online through this Orange Show Center for Visual Arts. So this is the visual or visionary arts group that is in charge of a lot of the folk art in the greater Houston area. Things like Smither Park we saw. Places we're going to go shortly, like the Beer Can House and the Art Car Museum as well. Unfortunately, it looks like the Orange Show's closed today, and maybe they're doing some renovations. I saw something that they are not going to be open again potentially until 2025, but check back on their website if you do decide to come here and try to get a tour. However, just looking through the gates here and looking at all the architecture, the designs, the work that went into just entering this place is worth coming to take a look at, and especially since it's right next to Smither Park. It's such a short walk to just come here and take a look around the Orange Show. We're going to head from here and go check out the Gerald Hines Waterfall, which is a pretty iconic spot in the western portion of Houston. It's in an area known as the Galleria. So let's go head over there, check out that spot, and see what that looks like. I've actually never gone before, so I'm really excited to check that all out with you. Welcome to the Gerald Hines Waterfall feature. However, I came here and I was super excited to share this all with you, but they have the waterfall turned off right now. So I'll see if I can find some pictures of what this actually looks like when it's running. There's a number of other videos out there, and I'll see if I can find some links to those as well. But normally there's a big cascading waterfall that comes over in this horseshoe-shaped feature. And to get an idea for scale, I'm here and this thing's about 64 feet tall, and it was actually built in the 1980s. They started construction in 1982, it was completed in 1983, and it's quite the impressive feature here in the Houston area. Hopefully I'll be able to come back another time and you all can see what this looks like when the water's running. But until that point, I'll find a video and I'll plug it in now so you can see that. This feature is actually named after Gerald Hines, who is a prominent figure as far as buildings go here in the greater Houston area. He had somewhere around 60 years of creating architectural wonders for this area. So back in 2009, they actually named this water feature after him. All right, well, unfortunately, that one was a bit of a bust, but at least you got to see where it's at, and I hope you all get a chance to come here when it's actually running. From here, we're going to go to a couple spots in the middle section just north of downtown, and we're going to go visit the Beer Can House, the Art Car Museum, and then also check out a pretty unique gravesite here that actually I didn't know this individual is from this area and buried here, but has a very prominent history for the United States. As a very significant individual, most people know him. In fact, Leonardo DiCaprio played him in a movie. Welcome all to the Beer Can House, which I've gone to before and done an episode, and I'll link that up here for you all so you guys can take a look at that. But I wanted to make sure I included this on the unique places to visit in Houston, because I don't know if you'll ever see another beer can house. Now, I've seen glass bottle houses. In fact, there's even a glass bottle house on the back part of the property here that the gentleman who created this house did. But you can learn more about this history by watching that video I did. And this is truly a unique Houston institution here that you'll see they're building all the way around this house, but they preserve this as a historic and folk art site. Here's some information about the Beer Can House. You'll see its admission is $5. Kids under 12 are free. Now you can walk around the grounds for free and just look at the wind chimes and all the beer cans used on the outside, but on the inside is a little bit more about the gentleman who created this, John Milkovich, and the story about how he started this house kind of back in the late 1960s. I believe it was 1968 he started designing this house and making it into this folk art exhibit that you see today, including everything out here on the grounds and in his driveway. What you see here took about 20 years for him to create. And once he passed away and his wife passed away, they ended up making this into a folk art and historic site because of the unique nature of what he had created over those 20 years. Drinking with his friends, family, neighbors, one beer at a time, and placing them here to create what is known in Houston, in a very special Houston landmark, the Beer Can House. And I love this sign, live by the golden rule, and that's his street address here in Houston, done in Roman numerals. And it is a windy day, so hopefully you can hear those wind chimes. Okay, from the unique Beer Can House, now we're going to head over to somewhere else very unique, and that is the Art Car Museum. So every year they have a big art car parade here, and I believe it's coming up. We'll find out some more information about that once we get over to that museum, which is about 5-10 minutes from where I'm at here. And here's yet another unique art or folk art place within Houston. That's the Art Car Museum. And actually we're getting really close to coming to what is known as the annual Art Car Parade, where individuals decorate their cars and show them in downtown Houston and actually have a whole parade that runs through that area. Let me see if I can get in. You'll see it's got free admission, but I believe you have to have a reservation, and I don't have a reservation for today, so I wasn't sure what time I was going to make it here. So let me see if I can get in or not. One thing as I start coming towards the entrance, you'll see even the building that houses the Art Car Museum is pretty folk arty, including all these mosaic marbles on the outside. Welcome to the inside of the Art Car Museum. Now, I mentioned you needed reservations to get in here. They were nice enough to let me in. But part of that, and what I'm really sad to hear about, is it's actually closing because the two founders of the Art Car Museum actually passed away. But the pieces are actually going to move to Victoria, Texas, and hopefully I'll be able to go there and check this out. I love the artwork on this car. Really true work of art, both as a car, as a classic, and then actually the paint job that they did on it. And how do we explain this one? Eclectic? Look at that. There's like alligator skulls and looks like rubber alligators and a skull on top with, are these wood carved ducks or duck statues that have been colored? This is a definitely eclectic, pretty unique art car. Look at that thing. And look at this thing. Wow. It's like somebody drained a swamp somewhere or a bayou, and this is everything that popped out, including some of these little, like a chupacabra or something. It's interesting. So Anne's work that's up on the walls here, you'll see are basically like collages. That one's called Pigtails, and they're pieces of ham on the side of the lady's head. Interesting. And you can get an idea of some of her work. And here are some more of the collages. That one's pretty interesting. From the Art Car Museum, we're going to go head to kind of an unusual stop, and that's going to be to see the resting place of somebody quite famous and somebody whose work I saw growing up, or at least one of his pieces of work I saw growing up in Southern California. So let's go make our next stop at Glenwood Cemetery. All right, folks, so this is my next stop along this trip to look at some of these unique sites. I'm actually at Glenwood Cemetery, and there's a very famous individual who was born in Houston and who passed away here in Houston that I didn't realize, and I thought I'd share that with you all. As I was doing some research of unique places and unique people in this area, this name popped up, and it's one that everybody probably knows, and one that has a bit of a tragic story associated with it, but was very important for history in a lot of different ways. And that person's final resting spot is right behind me, and you'll see it's a pretty nice area within the cemetery. And who was this person? This is the final resting place of Houston's own Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was born December 24th, 1905, so on Christmas Eve, here in Houston, Texas, and he would pass away April 5th, 1976. And they have quite the nice memorial to him here. Howard Hughes actually started in the film industry and actually ended up having RKO Productions and became well known as a film producer, but then also found a love for aviation, and things like the Spruce Goose were one of his ideas going forward. Now later on in life he became a recluse, and I believe he had obsessive compulsive tendencies, became agoraphobic, didn't like to go outside, and very much became a hypochondriac, and eventually locked himself away for a long period of time until he eventually passed in 1976. There was a movie done about 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago now, The Aviator, where Leonardo DiCaprio plays Howard Hughes, and you can watch that movie, get an idea about his life. But he was from here in Houston, Texas, and then this was also his final place of rest. Pretty unique spot, and one I've never been to before. In fact, this Glenwood Cemetery is absolutely stunning and gorgeous, and I imagine there's a lot of other influential individuals that were buried here as well, but Howard Hughes was a pretty unique one for me, and as somebody who grew up out in Southern California going to things like the Spruce Goose, it hits really close to home for me coming to visit this site now. Okay, so going from a cemetery, our last stop on these unique places, at least on this trip, we'll be checking out a place called Bethel Church down in Freedmantown. So let's go run down there and take a look at this very unique church. And you may be asking yourself, well, what's so unique about this church? Well, wait till you see it. Welcome to one of the most unique sites, I think, in all of Houston, and that is Bethel Baptist Church, which you may ask, well, what's so special about this Baptist church? Well, one, it has a pretty important history in this area of downtown in Houston, and two, they have made it into a wonderful open door park, which you can see there's no roof on this building anymore, and you see the benches you can hang out in and the stained glass. I'll try to capture what this park looks like from different angles. I'm really bummed it's not open so I could show you all, but it truly is a unique place here in Houston, and one I've never seen anywhere else. The Bethel Church was central to life here in what was known as Freedmanstown, and as you can guess by the name, is that this was one of the first areas in the greater Houston city where people of color could come and were free post the Civil War, and they set up a town here. And with that, there was a series of churches set up. Now this one, as it looks today, was built and looks like this from about 1949 to 1950. However, there's a congregation here for a long period of time. The first building here was built back in the 1890s. Eventually, that building was destroyed in the 1900s, and then they continued to build this. In fact, the foundation, the first part of this building was really built in 1923, and then it would grow up to look how it looks today as this kind of Gothic revival Baptist church, really in the 1940s, late 1940s, early 1950s. Unfortunately, January 24th, 2005, there was a fire here which burned the inside of the building and the roof. However, the walls were basically preserved, and that's what they decided to build into this park as we see it today. Now, I looked online to find out when it's open, and I couldn't find any information about when this would actually be available for people to come sit in. There are a series of posters or banners along the side that talk about the history of the church here, and from here I can see it says 1890, and we mentioned this area back in the 1890s. You'll see on the side of the church here that there's actually information about the congregation that was here, first organized in 1891 by Reverend Jack Yates, and then rebuilt in 1923 here. And of course, there was a further expansion on this building, and we can see that up there, and it says completed September 30th, 1950. And you'll see the individuals that were associated with starting to build and expand this beautiful church. I want to thank you all for joining me today to check out these unique and historic sites around Houston, Texas. Most often when people come here, they go to places like NASA, which is amazing, but there's some little hidden gems in this area that the locals know about and maybe others don't go to as often. So I hope these give you some new ideas about places to explore. If you are from Houston or the greater Houston area, I hope this opens up some possibilities for you as well. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe, leave comments down below. Are there some other areas in Houston that I didn't visit today that you all would like to see or would like me to add to another video? I'm already thinking about a part 2 to this unique places around the greater Houston area. So with that being said, thanks again, and everybody take care.